So it's 5:30. Dipti,
Yeah,
can we
yeah,
start?
we are good to go. Yeah,
Okay, so over to you, Rupali.
yeah. So hello everyone. Welcome to the fourth lecture in the series on South Asian landscapes, organized by the School
Can
of
we
Environment. Yeah,
start?
we are good to go. Yeah.
Okay, so over to you.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, welcome everyone to the fourth lecture in the series on South Asian landscapes, organized by the School of Environment and Architecture, and partly supported by the Urban Design Research Institute. I am Rupali Gupte. I teach at the school, and I'm also co-founder of the institute. So as part of this, the South Asian landscapes series, we've been insisting that, in the current climate of, narrow nationalisms that we've been sort of, thrown into all over the world, the regional turn is the only way to think. And across the South Asian region, we also believe that our shared geographies, our shared histories, and our shared cultural practices will allow us to come together to think collectively on the idea of spatial processes, which will also kind of lead us to thinking of new trajectories, which are not sort of, taking us on the beaten path of thinking of development and progress like we've seen before, because we've seen that there have been problems in the way, development and progress have been seen so far. And our own shared histories have the possibility, our own shared cultural practices have the possibility to take us in new directions. The last talk in the series was by Professor Qazi Ashraf, also from the Bengal Institute, who opened up some interesting questions for us on the contemporary. He sort of, asked us to think about processes of architecture where we start thinking on ideas of how to deal with water, ideas on how to deal with the city, but also most importantly, how to deal with life worlds. And I think that's kind of the the problem of the contemporary together. How do we actually think of life worlds? And which is why it's, we are very happy to invite Salauddin Ahmed, who's also from the Bengal Institute here. Salauddin has a very interesting proposition, which is, we were really intrigued by. He speaks about the idea of architecture as a mediator between the self and the material world. So Salauddin is an architect who believes architecture can never be understood only through buildings. He runs a collaborative practice with artists and craftspeople and is the founding member of the Tuesday Night Gathering, a lecture forum on architecture. He's also the director of the curatorial program at the Bengal Institute. And, I think that's what we've been also interested in, because we've been talking about, through the School of Environment and Architecture, the idea of a multidisciplinary practice, and new questions that come from, thinking of the self, and sort of new material practices from there. So with that, I would like to invite Salauddin Ahmed to deliver his talk. Salauddin, I'm going to switch off my video now and invite you for the talk. And I'll come back after that and we'll have a discussion and then also open it out to the audience. So thank you so much, Salauddin.
Thank you. Thank you, Rupali, for inviting me. This wonderful opportunity for me to share who I am as a person and later as an architect, perhaps. For me, it is never-ending pursuit to know myself, and in the process of knowing myself, knowing others. And I being an architect, I find it an extreme privileged position, because architecture has a sort of umbrella that encompasses a much larger framework of life than many other professions. While I practice and I teach and I'm being taught, there are a number of elements came close to my process of thinking, and for the clarity, I often debate with my colleagues here in Bangladesh, also on the international platform. I picked the title of my talks for tonight is Path of Curiosity in Architecture. It is almost questioning to my own walk as an architect in this discipline. And there are three elements that I will try to connect directly or indirectly throughout this talk. And of course, I'm going to be showing some of the things that I've done. It is absolutely not possible to share everything or most of the things that I've done or still doing through a talk. So I will try my very best to focus on 2 to 3 projects where I may be take the audience or the listeners some guiding lines the way I've been driven into looking at things. So it is the presentation is mostly to do with perception and what attracts me, and if you want to term it, what would be the term that I'm closely related to. I find intimacy, curiosity, and memory a big part of architecture, where without this inner understanding of the terms, at least I find myself on the weaker end of the practice as an architect. For me, architecture is not the building at all. It is the last thing about architecture is an architect can do is express himself through a built work. But architecture is an armature, perhaps, where whether you are in it or within it or around it, it continuously supports you, who you are and your connection to the rest. So this particular image is very, very important for me to see how the simulacrum between the word architecture and human being are divided in a way that it's like it by posing it the way I have done it, it just completes the portrait of that individual. That individual represents all of us to me. I also think architecture is part of a landscape or a context that without the presence of the given, my work would not be in a realm of understanding where, of course, it would be a building, it would be a creative journey, but through that creative journey, my discovery may not come close to the inquiry that I began with, which perhaps the term architecture would be the thing that I try to understand. Through that architecture, I try to understand the context and my surrounding and how it became and who it got support from, how is it supporting the others. So the greater part of architecture is about collectivity. And I may be wrong, but I feel that there's a great divorce between the natural mind and the educated mind. And architecture is very much came from an educated, informed mind. And within that realm, the architect is somewhat debated, dialogues been created, shared. But for the greater purpose of architecture, which allows you to see who you are as an individual or part of the society, I think there is a kind of disjunction between the informed mind versus natural mind. Now, in this particular slide, one is built by someone, and it answers all your inquiry. It tells you what it is. It tells you how tall it is. It tells you what's the breadth of it. It tells you how it breathes. The building on the right, designed by our great master Mazhar Islam, he takes most of the essence from the given and allows his building to speak of the same. But it's at an art college in Dhaka University, and I have talked to many of the users of the building who claim to be the student of art or artist in town, they have very little understanding of the building. They appreciate the building the way it is, but the essence behind it, the strength behind it, many a time I find that they have difficulty to express. Because perhaps it comes from a very informed mind. It doesn't allow the natural mind to be absorbed into. So for me, cities and architecture are a correlated thing, you know, to understand a building, to understand a work. Perhaps one needs to go to understand in a much larger context. That context is, in an urban language, is a city, which is a collection of spaces, and those spaces allows you to understand who you are and your connection to those spaces and your connection as part of the society. A city always have a beginning. You know, cities um, are a sort of a bloodline for everyday existence. Excuse me. And so it has a journey which allows a citizen to participate in their everyday ritual. Often architects and planner and urban designers are very much closely involved in putting together a city or an urban corridor or urban edge. But a lot of time we forget that there's everyone who participates in the city are part of the making of a city. And many a time, those participants are not asked how is it that they would like to see their city. And in long run, over the years, cities born and die. And one of the things that we have been experiencing in a city like Dhaka, which is a home for 20 million plus maybe today, it's growing faster than lightning speed. It's transforming, it's changing, it's allowing, it's being used, it's been abused, it's been taken advantage of. And many of the cities and many of the participants of the city, they don't understand the reason behind all that. Why is the city is not offering them the essence of living in an urban environment? So this is something that bothers me as well as an architect. So I don't really believe in going out and doing a building so that I'm happy and I can share with others. This is a building I've done. For me, my building rather become invisible in the context. My building rather become part of a much larger thing. If that is a successful connectivity, then I feel more successful as an architect. I rather, you know, all the thing that we learn in academic level, that you are creative, you can do better, you are gifted. I really don't believe that. Maybe I started with that, but now I think it's the creativity, the term should be taken away from the education of architecture, because that particular term gives a sort of a height which sort of pushes the majority to a certain level. So majority feels that this person who is an architect or designing or designers, they are a separate entity. It's very difficult for them to understand who we are. It is not their fault. I think it's the blame could be on us, because we haven't been very careful how we educate our mind and how we understand the natural mind or people with mind with other background. City architecture is also for me very personal journey. You know, in this journey, in these narratives of life, I am constantly reminded who I am, where I came from, and who I'm connected to. You know, who are my closest, who are my distant. It's so my existence among my peer or my close bloodline is incomplete if I don't any photograph around me, if I don't have any connectivity with my great-grandfather, with my uncles, my brothers and sisters, with the homestead that I am live in. So for me, it's a great chapter for an architect. I also think architecture is mostly subconscious journey. Of course, consciously we apply that journey, but architecture is kind of subconscious journey. It's only recently I put together some cognitive map about my growing up so that I could better understand what I was interested in those days. So the drawing on the very far left is the drawing that I sort of bracketed my age from 5 through 10, and then from 10 through 15, then 15 through 20, then 20 through up until I was in America to get my education and my various moments in the States. So I sort of looked at it and I realized my boundaries, I found my boundaries there's always boundary about things, only then you can break it, only then you can go beyond it. So it was important for me to sit down and sort of draw a few lines. I also look at my process of thinking in a way that I can closely understand if I were to ask myself who I am and what does this building gives me, or what am I am to a particular space. So these are all my literally what you're looking at the screen is the way I sort of think about things. I think I'm that Vitruvian man, I'm holding those seeds that I can throw, and I knowingly with the belief that something will grow and that those grain will offer far beyond me, that be for the community, for the country, or for even beyond that. So for me to think about who I am and what's my responsibility, and how do I represent that through some graphics interpretation. So perhaps it's one of the way that I tried, and to look at a building, as the building, who you are, how do you really connect to me, and how much do you exist in me? So, and it just continues. These are very personal ways of looking at my work and my thinking. I go to the site, I look at things, but often I see my notebooks are filled with information that has nothing of interest to others, perhaps. But for me, memories is very important of a site. What the site used to be, what was the genus loci of the site, what it tried to tell me. So I take notes on those, and I come back and I sit down and I draw, I write, I paste, I sort of look at things in a very different ways. For me, city is a mosaic of things. A city has all the answers for at least for an urban architect. One has to just go around, one has to look closely. One has to look closely. Things are important, things are not too important, things are banal. I insert my work within the frame of those that I see in the city. I try to take clue from them, So in this particular view, there are some moments of my own findings and some moments that I try to make visible for others to see and look at. I see, for me, it's very important to look at things that are minute, almost invisible, almost has no direct relationship to the practice of architecture. But without those moments, without those pixelation, my practice is incomplete. Without the sense of tactility, without the touch of someone's presence in a work, it's for me, if you don't have that in your own work, then the work will not have any value to the user, to the others, to the society. So this is, you can see the Dhaka city, the bottom left here. It's a difficult city. I could probably say I live in a toughest city, probably not as tough as Mumbai, but could be equally tough or could be tougher. I don't know. I never lived in Mumbai, but I've been there a few times. But I live in a tough city, and the city is always brushing against your skin. It's always poking you, provoking you. You go out with one thought, you come back with 10 different thoughts in your mind. It's never a straight line. You have to follow to remain in your course. I think one has to be a bit mental and mentally strong. This city can drive you to the edge at times, but there is also beauty in it. The beauty of that grows without care. The beauty of someone may have thought of something in this particular shots. I'm sort of fell in love with this mossy green wall, and whenever I had my opportunity or scope, I try to go as close to what I have seen, but it's difficult to get close to the reality. You can really never get close to exactly what you see in nature. You can always try and you can take your attempt, but you will always have a certain distance from what you wish and what you have gotten. City is a collage for me. You pick and choose because as an architect, you may work with an intent, and that intent could be manifested through idea of bits and pieces from here and there. And if your understanding of the city is clear, the better you will be as an architect in your practice. So this is a paint shop / a manager's quarter. It's a mixed-use building. It's in Nawabpur. Nawab is the Mughal enclave of old Dhaka, and this building is in the midst of all that tightly knitted building in Nawabpur. And my plot size was so tiny. It was, I think, 3 meter by, say, about 7 meter, 10 by 36 feet in the feet scale. And I had to come up with some kind of understanding. What is it that I feel that architect must be a part of a larger fabric? So my work began with some kind of taking notes of the context. So what I've seen around the old Dhaka, this old wall, I'm sure all of the Indian old city has similar kind of look. And the buildings are here next to each other, for no particular reason. They are there because they have to be there. And they are there with certain degree of negotiation, understanding. At times they're frictional, but then again, they have to live with it. So I took cue from that to come up with straightforward black and white drawings for the plan. I could not begin with that. So you can see the upper left corner is the plan for the building. I was trying to figure out how can I also begin to draw my building in plan level with that kind of attitude that it is a collection of elements, a collage of a different subject, and bring it together. So it speaks to me very personally. So this plan, of course, we had to have a plan for the permit department, but this plan is very important for me because it is what I can relate to, what I can understand from a given context. And these are the things, to the left is part of the building that I've done, and on the right are the little things that hangs around you while you're on the side, while you're doing construction. And you remember them. You remember how they look at you, how they pose at you. You remember little things that hangs around you, little things that has no value to you, but it has great value because someone's livelihood on those little things that they sell off the hook, So, so this is a somewhat hardline plan where I go back and forth. That's a habit I have. I often make decision on site. So the building has a 4-storied. Ground floor is a paint shop. Above 2-storied is a storage facility for the paint shop, and above that is the manager's quarter. So the bottom image is the plan of the building, which is in the third floor, and the street level is the upper slide. The site had an existing two-story building, which I had to sort of adapt to and add my new phase of the building. And it is this constant going back and forth to the drawing, to the site, to the building, to the context, and try to bring it together. So when it's all said and done, you will have a threshold where you can look back and you say, like, you know, okay, this is where I'm standing and this is what I'm looking at. This is a window I never had, yet now I can see through it and it frames in a certain way. And those kind of little things excites me, little things that you know, I almost inhale in me whenever I go to old part of Dhaka. You know, it's absorbed me. It's a biochemical experience. So I try to bring that into my own work. So to the left is something that I've looked at, you know, while I was walking around the neighborhood, and then how closely you can bring that. You know, you cannot bring everything, but you can attempt to bring some of it, you know, and how you can express the people who are coming to this space that there is this connection, vertical connection, and that connection is very important for the person who is trying to sell the paint, a person who is buying the paint, and how that paint becomes the subject of presentation. So this is the two-story facility above the sale counter, where all you just get to do is just turn up, look up, and you get to see this vertical, so almost like a museum of paint cans and all that. And the manager's quarter, you know, we go up and you sit down in the living room. There's always a window to someone can see you. There's a dining table which has a variety of opening around it, and you know, you can sit as a collective and you can sit alone, and it offers you that breath of fresh air. And this is one of the doors to the entry of my project, and I'm very happy to say that my door is equally strong or weak to the given. You know, it is an architect's responsibility not to overflaunt their talent and their skill and their ability to show the neighbors that this is what I've done, but rather be humble and bring the audience to your project and tell them, hey, I'm just like you know, you come around and you sit next to me. Here I offer you a place to sit down. So for me, it's very important. The architecture must offer beyond its given. It doesn't matter how big. You can offer a large parcels, or you can offer an edge. They're equally strong and equally powerful, I think. And so its scale doesn't matter. It's the idea that matters for me. You know, in the city like Dhaka, you are always becomes very dry. You become very sort of ripped apart. You know, every day is a new day for you. You know, how you tackle yourself as a person, as an architect, as a father, as a husband. You know, the city makes you question this thing, and I think it's very valid. So, you know, whenever you get a chance to do something beyond the city border, you do it. And this is another opportunity for me. You know, this soft and temporal landscape of Bangladesh. It's a beautiful landscape. You know, if you live in the city, you don't know how beautiful the rest of the country is. And so you go there to share your understanding of their language, of their landscape. And in the process, you also learn about them. The whole, it's kind of reciprocity between the doer and between the receiver. So this is an indigo plant I was asked to design, and hearing the community, hearing my client, I decided that I can only volunteer my time in this. I could not ask them for any remuneration or anything, because these are the people who had nothing before this project. So I feel privileged to be a part of their life, where I can offer them, something that I have, and I also make their life a bit easier. You know, it is in Rangpur, the north of Bangladesh, where the material, the context, everything tells me it's very much simple bamboo and all that. So I took cue and I went in the most cheapest and simpler way. I participated with the people who put together this cottage industry. It's called NCVI, Nijera Kori Village Cottage Industry, and they wanted to put together a indigo plant where the plant indigo dye could be used on natural fabric, and that denim could be sold to international market through some NGO, and in return they could gain some momentum in their own life to have a better and meaningful, perhaps more comfortable life. So this is what I've learned from the context, and this is what I've offered. And so the details are pretty much learning from the given. I perhaps placed it in a way, detailed it in a way, it becomes a little more, gives a little more longevity, you know, but always remain humble, you know. It's not worth trying to, as I said, to go and show something other than what you can see around the context. So this simple laying of the bamboo, simple laying of the wooden structure and the corrugated metal roof line, it's the most simple answer for this particular given. So that's what I did. So and it offered a sense of place for the user, for the owner of this cottage industry. And I'm happy that they could see a distant light, but between the distant light and where they stand, the landscape is there. They understand every inch of it, and I never wanted to take it away from them through my work. So for my work is sort of a translation of the landscape, a translation of what I understood. Lost and Found, it is a memorial work, it's a public work, it is a collaborative work with a local artist, an artist called Thali Al-Mamun, who has been doing tremendous work in this country and internationally. But, you know, he has gone through a tragic event in his life. He's a survival, a terrible road accident, and in the process of his survival, he has lost his best friends. He lost 5 friends out of the 8 that were in the car, and closest of all, the 2 individuals, Tariq Masood was an internationally known filmmaker of Bangladesh, and Mishuk Munir was a cinematographer, also internationally known, 2 legends of our film industry perished in this terrible accident. So Thali wanted to have a closure in this experience that he had. He wanted to raise the awareness of the people through his work and through certain understanding, not through just crying out loud, "Here and I survive," and rejoicing, but he wanted to have a different kind of closure about his second life. So he invited me to participate as his partner in this, and we were given from the university campus of Dhaka University and Rhode Island, where we placed the work, and I was in charge of how to place the work and what would be the circulation, what is the landscape, and how do the audience participate in this terrible event. So here's the site, you know, the yellow marked area is the site, the island, and the context island before intervening is like any other island in urban third world country, city like Dhaka, you know, it's falling apart and it's just needs a lot of work. There's some beautiful trees, but also there are some trees that perhaps not thoughtfully planted. But what do you do? This is what's been given. So my ideas to that, how it edges the work, how the work should be understood and also experienced. This perhaps is the very first sculpture in urban Dhaka that an audience has to participate. Most of the public art are visual in Dhaka city. You drive by, you know, you walk by, but you're not engaging, you're not having a conversation. So I took that opportunity to engage the audience with the work. So the benches to the left are part of the work, very much sitting, focusing on the work. All the edges are smooth, so you're turning in a way so you can always, your focus is toward the center. So Mamoon transformed the wreckage of the microbus into a painted white, which becomes sort of a neutral object. It tells more of an art object than the accent itself, but it has its own sort of an inner voice that tells you who I was and what I am today. And it also talks about the loss of things. I thought I didn't want to bring in the losses in a manner that reading a sign saying, hey, who died when, but in a more sublime way. So throwing a black stone as a carpet, as you can walk on as you get close to the subject. So your footstep is equal to the next person observing. So you are no longer an individual who is looking at it. You are a part of a collective viewer. So you look at things and perhaps you converse and perhaps you share your feelings. And while you do that, you also look at what has been given to you. So if you see a tree has been hurt because of homocentric understanding of a tree trunk, I try to rectify. So left is the same tree that's been used by concrete base where you can sit down and talk, but tree was almost dying. So for me, it was very important as I did my own work also to rectify what in my own capacity, what's been given to me. So looking at the landscape is also, I cannot deny at all. So these are some of the inner work that Dhali has done, and it's like the 5 pairs of arms, and it's holding a spirit, which you always feel, but you don't see it. And this is it, And I'm very, very proud and emotionally connected to this project, and I think it is my moral duty to give my understanding to another mind, and through 2 heads are always better than one. Concealed and Revealed is a project, I'll go quickly, maybe I'm taking too long. It's a project that I've done for a family who are trying to reverse the more of urban Dhaka living, which is inside of an apartment and always being inside, and you are trying to be inside and not being connected outside. But that's not how we grew up. We are in a tropical country. We are constantly connected with our environment, and more and more with this aid of technology, we are living in an environment where we are absolutely in a concealed environment and a controlled environment. But to the point we lack in vitamin D, we lack in vitamin E's, we lack in all this thing. And look at what's going on in today's world. The more people will die in this COVID-19, those who are not fit to live for the environment that has been given to you. So for me, I try to understand that through my own practice. So this particular project, these are some of the early study. I looked at the public versus private. I looked at how the building touches the ground. I looked at how this season has to work in the project. I looked at how the environment has to come in and out of the project, and how it breathes. So all that. So this is the 3-storied building in the heart of or new heart, the new development of Dhaka Edge, where it's quickly urbanizing. This is my site. This is my building. Where you look at the building, it's to me it's quite modern and equipped with many of the things that a modern life asks for. Modern life asks for, but it is important for me also to not forget where I came from. So the building has almost like 200 years of bookend history. There are elements that I've incorporated that I found in the last 200 to 300 years in the practice of architecture, and also insert element that goes maybe in the next at least 50 to 100 years from here. So this is, I thought it was important to understand architecture must be that intimate embodiment where the building is ready to answer to inquiries and ready to guide you. So to a informed mind, also an natural mind. So building cannot be, my work cannot be so tight-lipped that only an informed mind can understand my work. My work is very much open-ended. You can any inch, any corner you go, you touch, and you ask, what is this made out of? And the work will speak to you. This is what I'm made out of. If it's glass, you will tell I'm glass. If it's concrete, concrete. If it's timber, and timber. If it is made out of mud, I'm made out of mud. So it is an open book for all. And I think in today's world, it's enough with this idea of compatibility, idea of competition, idea of being on the top. I don't care as an architect, as long as I can be a part of the collective, as long as my work can speak to the greater common good, I'm happy. So this is Karim residence. You may be part of an enclosure, but at all time, the beauty of the exteriority must be a part of this interior, and they cannot be permanent either. So this temporality is very important. I think architecture is very much temporal. Nothing is permanent, but that is the most dynamic thing. You know that this thing is going to go away. But you allow yourself, while you're there, while your work is there, you allow yourself to understand those moments. So those windows and high windows, the material, the reflection, the shadow, and the shades, they all are part of architecture, I think. In architecture, my work is absolutely an empty shell if I don't allow those elements to come in and enhance the work that I've done. And so in this building, there are no window per se. All windows are doors. All doors are windows. Almost all. There are 147 doors and windows, and they all open up equally. Of course, they're privileged. If you want to have the windows to act as window, you have the privilege by using timber shuttering. You look at when you're inside, you're connected to outside. You have windows that brings you light from the top. You are part of a space that you look up, you open sky. And these are the things that we feel strongly as a human being. So I'm a human first, not an architect. So my humanity, my humanism in my work is very much a driving force. I don't think what did I do here? Oops. I don't think architecture is something that, and let me go to a slide before, is something is so sort of complete. I think the tactility of work must be there, the grain, the quality, the what is made out of, what kind of reflection it takes, how it takes it, how much it can take. It's about your own body. So my work allowed that to happen. My works are part of that language. And at times I cannot find answer to certain things through my commission work. So I participate in some kind of self-inquiries, inquiries through here in town or somewhere in the distant land, through digital world or through physical world. I was invited as a curator in 2015 and also in 2017 in this photo exhibition biennial in Bangladesh in Dhaka city. And I was invited to, because I raised enough question about the photography and how it should be perceived. And I questioned why all photograph needs to be hung on the wall. Why do I have to see things because this is how I have to be shown? And I also raise question if a black and white photography will be black and white if the room background white becomes pink. You know, what effect does it bring into the work? So it is perhaps black and white photography, but you know, it is not black and white photography. It is what I want to show through black and white. So all those things that I feel that greatly involved in the photography. So I was invited by the founder of this very successful Chobi festival, photography festival, international festival in Dhaka, to look at how photography could be looked at. So this is a work by Jana Romanova, a Russian who lives in Pittsburgh, a photographer who you know, looks at how people during a woman during her pregnancy, how she is connected to her partner, and then how they have the most intimate moments. So she went and photographed hundreds of couples laying in beds, and in the middle of the night she would get on a ladder and photograph them. And when I had my chance to expose, curate that work, and the space had a sort of double height space, and I thought the closest I could get to create that intimacy around the work, and by allowing in the full scale bed size images, so that audience could look from the top and see as if the photographer is as the photographer is seeing it. You know, Dinesh Abiram is an Indian photographer from Tamil Nadu. You know, his work, his process of development is very intimate, very, very intimate. You know, you have to get close, you have to be gentle how you hold each images. And, you know, you just can't really pick up so there is a layers of approach to his work. And I thought, you know, why not show his work in a manner that you have to bend down, you have to get close to it, and you have to pull out, you have to wear gloves, you have to read text, and then you take out the images, you lay it on the flat board, and you go through them, and you see others are doing the same, and you see color in the background, which is not part of your work, but it comes into space. So this is, I think photography is a media that has gone far away, but how the photograph could be looked at, I don't think it has gone that far. I think the photograph could be looked at in a very different. It should allow the viewer to change their posture, change their behavior. This is a work by Laura El Tantawe, Egyptian photographer who lives in England, I think, for the most part, but she's an international photographer. And she has gone and photographed and documented hundreds of these portraits of Indian farmers who had taken small microloan and could not pay back, as small as 500 rupee. And in the end, they couldn't pay back because they bought a goat with that 500 rupee, and the goat died for some odd reason, and the crop didn't come to couldn't be harvested, and they couldn't repay, which is an everyday story for many farmers. So she and all the photographs that she has documented, they all committed suicide. So these two images that I'm showing, and sort of the very zoomed in image of the hairline, are the people, they no longer exist. So how do I, as a curator, show them to the audience? So I quickly enlarge those already magnified images to farther size, which is in the left, bottom left, on the wall, the image of the skin, the hair, the cheek, the bone, the eye. And the person who are no longer with us, I put them in underneath magnifying glass. I felt that they are so insignificant in our life, as if that we don't need to see them, but I think they are one of the most important people that without their help, that we won't survive. So I thought of magnifying them. I want you to bow down, to get close to them and sort of see them. You take your time, you quench your eyes to understand who that person was, and then read about them, and then perhaps have some empathy and sympathy for their departure. Dhaka city brings also shanti and ashanti, peace and unhappiness for me. So I curated this particular black box, which you can walk in and has a voice inside. It speaks to you in a sort of a groggy way, the language you don't understand, and it's a collective language from the street recording. And outside audience can open each window and see their everyday life in Dhaka, things that make them happy, things that make them sad, the image that scares them, image that excites them, image that make them throw up. So I thought it's a good participatory work with the viewers, that they are very much in my world, and here's an opportunity for me to share what this Ashanti that I live with. And it's a collective Ashanti, and also some of my happiness that I live with. And you say things, and you say things to the greater audience or to individuals. And sometimes they mark your word. They say you're crazy, you worry too much, you question too much, you're complaining. So again, for me to go back to my design desk, and I experienced spaces. One on the left, a friend of mine trying to walk through this corridor. You can walk straight and walk up, so he had to sort of bend his knees and to go through this everyday corridor to a family home, and the noise while you're inside from outside. So I quickly came back and I looked at it, and then I presented the work to this international on city collective curatorial work. To me, every Bangladeshi that I talk to, their immense power. Without everyone in this city are burning their own torch, and I say to myself that knowingly I'm one of the firewood, and if someone burns me, they will get the comfort, they will get the light, knowingly I'm going with the ashes in the end. So I thought that Dhaka city could be experienced as an energy space. So this particular room was encased with firewoods, and you can go through this black curtain inside. You can go around and come through the other side. And again, I have a voice recording of a poem I've written about the city, and I read and reread and added music to it, and so it allowed the viewer to participate in the journey that I was going through. So as an architect, it's very easy for us to crack open something I do every day. I'm sure all grown-ups have cracked open an egg. And why do you do that? Because we want to get to it. We want to enjoy the given. But I think before we do that, we should also enjoy the process of it. We should try to get clue from the cracks. We should try to channel our energy through the cracks, so that we can perhaps understand things that we can never put back. But if you understand it, so next turn around, we will be able to do our intervention in a more meaningful way. And in the end, one must be ready. As an architect, I'm ready that my work either will be gone or be retrofitted. And I must see the humor in it or see the life in it. So I leave you with these slides. It's the CNG. It's made in India, but greatly used in Bangladesh for people to go from point A to point B. But when push comes to shove, it is not for us. It is for the chicken, and they're ready to go. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Salauddin. That was really beautiful. And I think you began, like when you began, you sort of almost summed up everything that you were going to talk about. You spoke about the idea of intimacy, curiosity, and memory, and I think that sort of in some ways speaks about the rest of the 45 minutes that you spoke about, which was, really beautiful. And I think one really sort of, striking thing was that, you constantly, even when you were showing your work, you were showing, you were showing the context around, you were showing the city around, the landscape around, almost sort of seamless. There was almost sort of a seamless relationship between your work, and it was difficult to, actually see whether it was, your work or the context, which is actually what you've been speaking about. And I think that's really, really beautiful. It reminds me of, this Rene Maria Rilke's this story, or it's called the Notebooks of Malte Lauritz Rigge, where he speaks about the idea of the body and the city sort of, becoming seamless with each other. And it's almost seems like your work is like that, the body, the city, one's own memories, one's own self sort of all merge and come together in the way you kind of look at architecture, which is really beautiful. And I think it's really special. I just wanted to ask you a question, from there, you speak about this idea of the natural mind and the informed mind, and you also showed the image of Mazharul Islam's building, which is the most revered sort of building, not only in Bangladesh but in South Asia. And we've had a sort of pedagogical process that has come a long way from there. I'm curious to know, when you speak about this idea of the natural mind, as you call it, and the informed mind, where do you think, what would you think, pedagogical processes could be that sort of bring in this idea of not the informed mind, but maybe, another mind that is messier, another mind that is, I'm not sure, I'm not sure of natural, but, a mind that sort of is not probably that informed. So what would you think could be pedagogical processes that could bring in this idea of the non-informed mind?
Okay, there's a term in Bengali, it says Manush Matri Chamatkar, human being is miracle at birth.
Mm-hmm.
So I sincerely believe that if someone never ever goes into an academia or schooling, he or she can easily come up with a shelter and live through and never ever be bothered by this terminology that we use as an architect. I think one of the loss that has happened with the idea of gaining knowledge through academia or through the pedagogy of variety of subject matter is that we really divorce ourselves from the greater purpose of being human. I think this is very personal positioning. We forget that our position as a human has the ability. So, the academia has taken a role of a role that allows the mind to grow in a very specific way, because that mind has a specific purpose for the society. That mind has a purpose to serve. The mind is not a free anymore. When you are a doctor, you are a doctor. Your purpose is to serve the society. So in this process, I think greater fabric of the society are having difficulty to understand. At least I can talk about my own culture. 80% of the people, they can talk about, say if you put a thermometer, in front of them, for them, they know is the temperature that could be accurately gauged. But for them, of your well-being is enough to touch you. We have that ability to, by touching you, I could tell you whether you are emotionally well or not, physically well or not. So these kind of natural ability that we have as a human are not been injected into the process of educating a mind. I think we are more sort of sterile to be more specific, and the more specific we are, more divorced we are from the rest. An architect, a landscape architect, is very I think we think like a landscape architect will not have greater understanding of architecture, or an architect has no understanding of the landscape, or a landscape architect may think a doctor will have less understanding. So these are the specificity of knowledge gain. But I think a natural mind could look out in a setup, and probably they could tell things they see around them in a very natural way. And the things are fundamental truth. You know, they believe in all those. They don't need to know. They need to go through, I would think, to understand, to narrate a story of life, to know the alphabet that we inform mind know. So there are these inner alphabets. And I, as an architect, I always nurture that, try to get close to what I have naturally. And my academia supports that, the whatever that I have as an informed mind. So I try, it's a kind of difficulty that I still am going, and I don't know when it's going to end. As an architect, I find it is I need to balance myself as a architect or as a person. So my work is an undulation between the two worlds, like many others, I suppose.
Yeah. My question was also, if you had to teach, those processes, if you had to sort of bring in some of those processes into, pedagogy or teaching, what would you recommend, as kind of bringing into a curriculum?
I'm sorry, I missed out the second phase. I'm also involved in teaching, and I specifically teach these first year courses in the university where the fresh mind comes in to understand what architecture is. I sort of take them through the ability they come with. So in my studio, as a first year student, you are not allowed to bring any pencils, any scales, triangular scales, any paint, any paper. So then we look at things that we can find around us, around the campus, may say, or we can go to some site, and you can clearly draw up things, make up things, and you can discuss about things. I think to observe an anthill for a long period of time can teach you to be a better architect. There's a certain discipline in them. There's certain harmony in them. There's certain rhythm in them. Looking at a flower, looking at these blades of grass, looking at how a tree stands tall, So I think, that we have the kind of prescribed way of teaching architecture can be looked at differently, can be looked at how one really see, the gauging ability of someone. If you look at things for prolonged period of time, perhaps you will see things that you don't see in a quick look. You can hear things, you can also listen things, You can see, you can gauge, you can talk, and you can share. So these are, I think, I teach in my studio, and I always go back into the thing that are already there, even the built thing, a small little spoon to a old little building, and I try to show them the mason that worked behind, the memory they have left behind. And I think as an architect, it is utterly important to discover than to create.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's really beautiful. And also, I mean, we at C, we've been sort of discussing this idea of a long durée practice, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where the projects that you do are just sort of moments in a practice. So practice is really sort of a long durée practice of thinking, making, experiencing. And you may or may not have a project, and that sort of becomes just a moment, a fleeting moment. And I think that's really sort of beautiful, and the way you've sort of placed your own practice, as this kind of long durée process of experiencing life, and I think also Professor Kazi Ashraf in the last presentation spoke about this idea of life worlds. How do we sort of open up these life worlds around us, and sort of weave in our practices through these life worlds. So I think really beautiful. I'm going to just look at some of the questions that have come from the audience. I think the first is Anuj asking, and I think it's the same thing that I've been asking you also, about pedagogical processes. How do you kind of strategize your extremely organic practice between the city life and work into pedagogical processes? So yeah, anything you want to elaborate beyond what you've already said?
Well, my practice is if I also believe architecture cannot be understood from distance, through images and through projection. I am not good at it, sharing my work, the process that is well established. You photograph your work and you present it. I think the experience of a built reality is so important that without being inside Taj Mahal, without hearing the echo of that Mumtaz name, Taj Mahal could not be understood. So I sort of in my practice, the way I when I teach and when I practice, anyone who would like to be part of my work in my office, they have to come and do something other than given a specific job. They have to come up and express themselves with some kind of making of an object where an intention could be somewhat understood. So in my office, we have this sort of conceptual models done by many interns where they came and sat down, and I personally interview or talk for hours before anyone can walk into the studio to participate. And I call all my participants. So they have to sort of orient the way I look at things. And then they have to, that concept, if that takes them to wherever to get material to express that idea, they have to go in the city and they have to talk to the people. And I think this is one way for me to connect with the mind. When they come to my practice, they come with a loaded mind of a degree. But for me, it's very important to understand, to decode their mind, and so that I can be part of their thinking process. So I also have a sort of attraction to understand what is it that they understand about. For example, if I I usually have them look at a brick, for example, and I told them, I give them a word, say like pain, for example. And I tell this participant to go and show me the very word of pain and suffering through this already built material, which is a brick. So it's a kind of a sort of introduction to the world of architecture that I believe are very different than the architectural academic practice, I would say academic practice has to offer. And I think it in the process of introducing that energy into a brick, the pain or suffering, he or she begins to understand their ability to crack open the subject, their ability to understand how much and when and how they can lift it, and the weight of it, their age of it and the fragility of it. and their intervention into it. So there are many other aspects of similar kind that they have to go through. And I think it is one could try to break off from a prescribed mind to a mind that has not been challenged, to introduce to ways that will add more to their thinking power, I would say.
Yeah. So,
Very difficult that to talk back, I would say. I'm not very good at explaining the complexity that one goes through. I think it's equally difficult for all of us.
yeah,
But this is what my answer would be to Anuj.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's really beautiful. Soumitra Ghosh is asking you, is there a condition that is peculiar to Bangladesh, which incubates the significant architecture from this home that is unpretentious and so humane? On one hand, it is open and absorbs from the education and works of the best from across the world, and yet finds anchor so firmly in the home and in the soft ground of the home. So is
Yeah,
that
I think
peculiar?
I'll try to, good question, deep question, and I'll try to answer as closely as I can. I think, there's this, it could be the colonial mind, neurothesmia, the term, we get very often, we get very sort of anxiety attack, we get depressed, we lose our confidence, and that mind will linger with us. It is literally an illness of the colonial mind. We have difficulty make decisions, and in the process of the recovery, we choose things. Our choice of whatever we choose in life are often given to us. We hardly ever decode our own system to say, this is what I need for myself. I personally think that it is important to try to get out of that illness and to make decision for yourself, and you will be that individual no matter where you go in the globe, and people will remind you who you are and where you're from. If then they can't tell you where you're from, they'll ask you where you're from. So I think it is absolutely important for a work of architecture should come and born out of a context in the manner in which it should. By default, it will soar across the border to any direction and will compete with any other work and still remain humbly grounded to the context. Without that kind of grounding, I think it will miss to be the defined term of architecture. It wouldn't be architecture for me, at least not for me. It will be a building. It will have all the twist and turn. It will have all the patina. It will have all the weathering, but it will not get into the realm of architecture if it's not well placed through deep understanding of a place and time.
Yeah, Salauddin, I think that this what Soumitra is also asking, and I think that's something that we're all curious about, because some of the most interesting, most sensitive, I would say, architectures coming from Bangladesh today, and I think that is something we're all curious about. Where is this sensibility coming from? Is there something peculiar about Bangladesh? Is there any sort of collective discussion that happens? Are there pedagogical processes, in schools of architecture in Bangladesh? Where is some of the sensibility coming from? I think this is something that we're all curious about.
I think we have to come back to Mazhar Islam, who was the modernist in his full rights, but he always talked about you have to be a global man, but you have to act local. I think Doshi is another example of that kind. You have to be global, but you have to know your backyard. And I think, unfortunately, and I could be pointed later on to my local colleagues, but I think that essential thinking into understanding architecture has been missed out in academic platform in this country. I think Mazhar Islam himself was a school of thought. Very unfortunate, he could not share a lot of it over his career because he was not getting the opportunity to express himself through a variety of projects. And there are many reasons for it. I don't want to get into that. But I think Mazhar Islam planted the seed of greater essence of architecture that is contextual, context bound, I would say, as culture bound. And you look at his work, extremely modern, extremely polished, but you cannot take that modernity and place it any other modern town. It has to be here in Bangladesh. Because he understood the modernity of our environment so well. So through him, I think, and then there was a chapter in 80s called Chetona. I'm sure you heard about that. It ran about a decade. And it further nurtured the idea of that think globally, act locally idea, and a number of architects came out of that school of thought. Later on, myself, Saifullah, and a few other young minds put together another lecture series or architectural platform called Mongolbar Sabha, where we sat for every Tuesday night and we discuss about a variety of things, things that has nothing to do with architecture, but everything to do with life. And we call it Tuesday night sitting, and we ran it for 12 years, and even today, but now it's kind of slow, I would say. We ran it for over 12 years, every Tuesday night. And we have had over 450 lectures on variety. I took a history course through 12 lectures, the last 5,000 years of Bengal Delta, which I don't think any school teaches that. Mm-hmm. And having to go through that history course of 12 lectures, I became much more confident. I can proudly say that nothing can scare me, not even COVID-19. Because I alone do not represent myself. My idea, my ability are always shared. So if I'm gone, someone will pick up, and there are already these signs of collaborative work, of the language of architecture. So, and then Bengal Institute came, which out of the same crowd. So whoever we ran Mongolbar Sabha, we all move into Bengal Institute now, which is a much larger international platform for us. And Qazi Khalid Ashraf is spearheading, he's one of the closest ally of Mazhar Islam. He's the one who wrote about Mazhar Islam in the most deepest sense. So I think some of this thing has created a sort of a connectivity among us, so that, and you know what, Nicholas Gruber, who did this Bengal Stream exhibition in Switzerland, what he saw in our work and what he explained later on, in a nutshell, he said that in Switzerland, you can design another funky chair, and that would be simply adding a chair to the 100, 200 chairs already been designed by some great designers. So your chair is just another chair. But in Bangladesh, when you design a chair, it represents whether a student will sit in the chair and get educated or not. So the chair is nothing to do with design. It has to do with the existence of someone's life. So I suppose if you can crack open that nut, it tells Bangladeshi architecture is I guess, trying to touch on the existential matter now. And you can see that in Marina Tabassum works, in Qazi's thinking, writing, and his work. And you can see that in Kashif Mahawood, you know, Saiful Haq, and many others, young, Hasibul Kabir, you know, you can ask others, they may say my name, I don't know. Right? So these are the things. And I think one lifetime is not enough to be an architect. It's never enough. And one person can never come close to this discipline. It has to be collective. It has to be shared. And maybe that's the recipe. I don't know.
There's one more question. Anjali Yadav is asking, with the intense urbanization and the need to go vertical, how can we eliminate the concept of an enclosed or a packed space? Or how can we add these spaces to give better access to nature or environment?
I think we need to go through, I think to quickly forget about that our greatest gift as being a natural being in this planet. And we think our homocentric views and being, you know, upright posture, you know, you can see at a certain height, a certain distance, it created some kind of ego in our mind that we quickly forgot that we are part of a much larger cosmos. And we have gone through a serious phase of transformation from low horizontal settlements to high-rise, highly packed, dense vertical living. And it showed our drawbacks. And we are trying to come out of it without eliminating the whole idea of vertical living. So it is a time-bound question, and I think over time we'll figure out how to really live with nature in a form that not has been thought of before. So this nature could be brought up vertically, and it has to open up for the other living being, you know, as well. You know, we teach you a question to you and to others. You know, we design this green architecture, we design all this, you know, rated architecture that will produce and save energy and all that. But each shadow it casts on the ground next to it, how many millions of bacteria dies? Essential bacteria. How often, how many of us really know how many bacteria or enzyme lives in a handful of soil? As an architect, it is utterly important to know as much as possible that my building may be vertical or horizontal, but the ground it sits on and the shadow it casts are crucially important, equally important. The shadow does not kill a lot of it. And we cannot replace some of it. We don't even know what it is. So how do you practice then? How do you build? Well, by becoming more of a natural scientist, I suppose, by participating with the natural scientists if you don't have all the knowledge, by inquiring before you go into it. And then you extract and allow your work to be participatory of the newly found knowledge. And I don't know this horizontal versus vertical. I designed one 12-story building in the last 16, 18 years of practice. I think whenever a tree goes beyond the tree line, it's a disaster. So I'm not the right person to ask about this vertical building because I also don't believe in them. You know, too much detachment from the ground up. It's for me, it's a difficult one. But then I've seen beautiful building, you know, rising vertically and creating a beautiful green manicured garden, you know, sustainable building, rooftops, converted into more green. But no one can beat the beauty of a flat ground, wetland, you know, rocky mountain and desert. So we have to find some ways to understand all that. Otherwise, we'll be getting more like Anish Ambani houses in Mumbai. You know, he has everything, snow to the desert to everything. But what is it? Oops, I shouldn't have said the name perhaps. But what is it? What does it represent in the end?
Yeah. Yeah, I think those are the questions that we have, but I think that was really wonderful. Oh, there's one more question just come in. Sabah is asking, in the process of going about any project for a given time and place, and knowing that there is a constant conflict, as I would like to identify it, between natural and informed mind, how do you go about bringing them to common consensus in your practice?
For this, Sabah has to come to Bangladesh. If she's from India, I invite her. I don't know, Sabah, how I can bring to a common ground. It is a struggle that recently I wanted to share today, maybe in the near future, someday, somehow I can share with your school. I recently finished a public park for children, a playground and a community center. And there was the biggest struggle. How do you bring a project where you can bring the user who perhaps didn't ask for all that thing in that project, you know, a library, a rooftop garden, a butterfly corner, a 12 years old girl where when she plays, how comfortable she feels, when someone is trying to play with a frog in the field versus a cricket on the same ground. How do you bring all those, you know, because mind works in a very unique way. How an architect it's merely impossible to bring all the under common ground. But then again, you take your stab at it. You know, you say like, okay, you draw a map, and you believe that people will sometime, not always, will follow that map. And while they're following that map, you create opportunities, moments, I would say, for them to be absolutely alone in their own world, where I, as an architect, I, as someone who can come up with an answer, is absolutely removed from this position, from those moments. So in my work, you may find pockets of spaces that sort of erase architect Salauddin Ahmed, erase the building, although you're within it. It gives something to focus on that is only very intimately for you. And that's not something I have inserted, but I've just let the window being open, this mind window. And for that, I would say, like, architecture cannot be explained or shown through this kind of images and sound. It has to be felt physically. And this is the difficulty I have to share the processes that takes me from point A to point B. And when I say the project is somewhat complete, but it is not complete unless someone else comes and walk through it, go through it, question it, and answer it. So these are the ambiguity and paradox and some of the grayness that I live in my project. I try to not touch everything. I don't think it's my responsibility to touch every little corners. Let it be the way ensemble to a viewer.
Thank you so much, Salauddin. I think that was, I also feel like, some of the questions about, intense urbanization and all of that comes up. But I think you somehow with, your kind of very, beautiful sense of intimacy, curiosity, memory, somewhere have, those answers to even thinking of ideas of intense urbanization. Because, one is to not look at the city as the other and be surprised by it, because that's where people move to out of their own free will, and and sort of enter through their own life processes. So how do we stop getting surprised by them, and sort of start thinking of these as life processes that we kind of engage in our own practices? And I think this question of intimacy and curiosity is where some of the speculatory logics through which cities are sort of growing can also be somewhere fought with, and sort of it is through the nuances of understanding cities through these sort of micro lenses that we can also somewhere in some ways fight these kind of speculatory logics that are making cities monstrous.
Right.
I think somewhere there is a life to that as well. I don't think that can go on forever, because how far will speculatory logics work when the economic forces itself fail? But I think what will not fail is some of these lenses of working through intimacy, curiosity, and memory. So I know with that, I would really sort of thank you for coming in here and bringing in some of these really lovely ideas to think of architecture through, because I think these are things that we require today, in thinking of South Asian architecture and sort of urbanism. And I would really sort of like to continue this dialogue in the future as well, as we collectively think of the future of this region. And I would really sort of also like to thank all the participants, my colleagues here, as well as the Urban Design Research Institute for supporting us here. And Salauddin, we are going to remain, friends. Of course, we've been friends for a long time now, but we would like to invite you to be friends of the School of Environment and Architecture. We're going to invite you for other talks with the students, and also engaging with the pedagogical program at the school to sort of build this uninformed mind that you have introduced in your talk. So thank you so much, Salauddin.
Thank you. It's been an honor to be a part of this platform, and I hope that I live up to certain inquiries. But each talk that I share with others, it's my own inquiry, and I question myself, and I hope to get some answers from the audience. So it is a participatory ways of learning, and of course, it would be wonderful to have you in Dhaka when the times allows, and your energy. When we first met through Documenta, and I think one spearheading individual. So I congratulate you to running such a successful academic platform, and I hope that yes, it's about time to look at ourselves and be blessed, being who we are before we become an architect or whatever we choose might to be. We should be give ourselves the opportunity to be the miracle that we carry in us, and that will come out if we allow it to. So thank you, thank all your team and the time been given to me.
Thank you so much, Salauddin.
Bye.
Bye.